He's been called the Devil of the Ozarks, but he's also held the titles police officer, police chief, constable, and sociopath. Grant Hardin was also a husband and a father. How could all of these titles be given to one man? Violence became him, and the more authority he was granted, the more power consumed him. As a married police officer, he raped a schoolteacher in 1997. That case went unsolved for over 20 years, until this power-trippin' recently fired police chief murdered an innocent man on the side of the road in 2017. This is the story of Grant Hardin. This case is brought to you by Chaos Rules in Madhouse, Madison County, Missouri. This rural community should be a safe place, but it hides a dark secret. Fredericktown is one of the most dangerous places to live in America. With a crime rate of 31 per 1,000 residents, Fredericktown has one of the highest crime rates compared to all communities of all sizes. I started researching one case sent to me by a desperate grandmother that led me to 15 more. Then I realized this county has had murder, corruption, and chaos since before the Wild West days. This book will start with the lynching by a Fredericktown mob in 1844 and will end up in an explosion. Hold on to your seats when you read this one. You're in for a wild, chaotic ride through rural Missouri. Check out my new book, Madhouse, Madison County, today. You're watching Chasing Justice with award-winning crime writer Sonova Cantrell. Stay tuned. We'll be talking about cold cases, criminal conspiracies, corruption, and the dark psychology of criminal masterminds. I know you're going to enjoy the show, but before you do, please like, subscribe, and share. All of that BS really helps us defeat the algorithm monster. Today we're talking about the Devil in the Ozarks case. Now, I am in the Ozarks and I have been here for 30 years or so, and I have been asked about this case many times on the street. I've had people stop me at events and ask me about this case because it's in the news and it's local, so I decided I would go ahead and talk about it. Now, this case is about Grant Hardin. He has been in the news recently. I do not believe he should be given the moniker Devil in the Ozarks because the Ozarks has had some many vicious criminals hide here, and I don't think he fits the bill. I think, honestly, anyone who calls him the Devil of the Ozarks, for one, they haven't studied true crime very often, and for two, I don't think they realize the brutal history of the Ozarks. So what is the Ozarks anyways? The Ozarks is 34 million square miles of rugged wilderness, countryside that criminals from all over the area have hidden here for years. We have had violent criminals hiding here since the white man came across the Mississippi the first time. This has been a notorious place for bank robbers, murderers, serial killers, moonshiners, drug runners, you name it, we've had it. We've had Bonnie and Clyde and Jesse James and John Dillinger and all of the infamous criminals. We've had them hide here periodically because it's a good place to hide from law enforcement. It's a hard place to search. If you're looking for and having a manhunt after you, this would be a good place to hide. And unfortunately, criminals have known that. So to call this man the Devil of the Ozarks, I think is a little bit naive. It is considering the fact that he's a very violent criminal, an egomaniac probably, and possibly a sociopath. I do not believe that Devil of the Ozarks actually fits this man, and I will give you all of my information and I'll let you decide if you agree with me or not by the end of this video. But we are talking about the case of Grant Hardin. Now, Grant Hardin has been in the news recently because he escaped from prison. So we're going to talk about what got him into prison in the first place. Now, November 9th, 1997 is where this story starts as far as we know. Now, this is Rogers, Arkansas. Rogers, Arkansas is a small rural area. It's not very big. It's not very crime-ridden. It had churches on every corner. It was a safe place to raise kids. It had a quiet air about it that a lot of people were attracted to. Unfortunately, that peace would be shattered on November 9th, 1997. Now, there was a young school teacher named Amy Harrison who went to school on a Sunday morning to work on things and get things ready for class on Monday. Now, the school did have other people on the property. There was a church that held services there on Sunday mornings in the other end of the building. So Amy quietly slips into the side door, goes to her class, and does her work. Now, when she goes out of her office, out of her little classroom, to use the restroom a short time later, she is met with a man and a gun. Now, this man assaults her brutally and leaves her shattered and shatters the entire community. Now, this case would go unsolved for 20 years, but Amy did everything she was supposed to. She did everything right. She collected as much information about this person as she could. She got all the details she could remember, and she told the police right away. Now, she told them that he had a stocking cap pulled down low on his face, and he had sunglasses on to where she couldn't see his eyes. All she could see was from his nose down. And she gave a really good composite sketch of the man. She had done everything she could to remember every detail possible, and she had actually done something that preserved DNA evidence. Now, that DNA evidence would be her saving grace, and it would finally be matched to someone 20 years later. But she did everything she could, and yet this wasn't solved, and it wasn't for police corruption or police apathy, because they worked really hard to save this. Amy was actually married to one of their officers, so it was devastating. It was devastating to everyone, because how could someone do this to a police officer's wife and get away with it? So it was compounded by the fact of who she was married to. Now, this was something that the whole community suffered from, and Amy was the victim of a brutal assault, and so she had to learn how to live with the fact that maybe, just maybe, this guy's going to get away with it and there won't be no justice for me. And that is one of the most devastating things beyond the crime itself, to think this person's got away with this and no, he's not going to be punished. And so she had that devastating thing she had to deal with for all of these years. Well, let's fast forward 20 years and 17 miles away. So 17 miles away in Gateway, Arkansas, she would finally get her answer, and it would come in the most brutal, violent way possible. Another man would die before they would find the answers for Amy. On February 23, 2017, 59-year-old waterworks and maintenance man James Appleton had pulled his truck over to the side of the road to finish a phone call. Now, the Ozarks is notorious for bad cell service. Now, there are lots of places to this day that are dead zones, and you cannot make a phone call even in the case of an emergency. So he knew this. He knew a couple hundred yards down the road he was going to lose his phone call, so he just pulled over to the side of the road to finish his phone call with his brother-in-law, which happened to actually be the mayor. Now, he was talking, and the mayor said in the middle of his conversation with his brother-in-law, he heard a strange sound. It almost sounded like somebody slammed the truck door really loud. His mind couldn't comprehend the truth of the situation. Somebody had just driven by and shot his brother-in-law in the face, point-blank range, with a shotgun. Fortunately, there was a witness to this brutal event. A local man was driving down the same rural road when he seen James's truck pulled over to the side of the road, and then strangely, about 100 yards behind him was a white car, and it was pulled over as well. So the witness went ahead and slowed his speed and slowed down to see if maybe there was a problem or something in the road. The man in the white car flagged him on by. So he sped up and he passed without thinking too much about it. Now, he knew who was in the truck and who was in the car, but he didn't think twice about it. He just drove on. But before he got to the top of the hill, he heard a sound that made his stomach turn. It was a shotgun. He looked up and he seen the white car behind him, and he saw the white car turn down the road to his house. And he knew that he better go back and check on James Appleton. And he did. And he saw a gory scene that no one should have to witness. When he pulled up beside James's truck, he seen that Appleton had been shot in the face with a shotgun. He called the police immediately, and the police hurried out to see the scene. They asked him, "Do you know what happened here? Do you have any information?" And he hesitated, because he knew who was in that white car. It was the former police chief, Grant Hardin. Now, everyone in town didn't really like Grant Hardin because he was a bully. Everyone in town knew who this guy was. He had just been recently fired as the local police chief. Grant Hardin had been given the police chief job, and the moment he got it, he became an egomaniac. He had been bullying people around town, pulling his gun on random people. He had been running people off of the road who irritated him. Acts of road rage that would normally get people in trouble, he would get by with. It got so bad that he was asked to step down only 4 months after he was given the title. Why? Because he had had a row with James Appleton. Now, 9 months after he had been fired, he was sitting behind James Appleton's truck when the witness drove by. The police processed the crime scene with due diligence, and they arrested the former police chief. They took his DNA and they put it into CODIS, thinking, this is just a formality. They had no idea what was going to come up. The answer would shock them. James Hardin's DNA was a perfect match for the unsolved crime and brutal assault against Amy Harris 20 years before. Everyone was shocked that this police officer could go in, brutally assault another police officer's wife, and then turn around and for 20 years try to help solve the case. It blew everyone's mind. They couldn't understand it. I contend that's the perfect definition of a sociopath. Eventually, Hardin pleads guilty to these 2 crimes and receives 80 years prison sentence. Now, for some dumb reason, they don't send him to a maximum security prison. They sent him to a medium security prison in Calico Rock. Now, unfortunately, that would only hold him for about 8 years, and he would escape and make the local news. On May 25th, 2025, the Devil of the Ozarks escapes the local jail. On May 25th, 2025, the Devil of the Ozarks is free once more when he simply walks out the front gate. Now, the investigation is underway right now to see if he had any cohorts and how he got by with this. Somehow he created a uniform-like shirt and walked out the front gate. He approached the gate with a little trailer, pulling a little wagon behind him with folding tables. He literally approached the front gate. The jailer glanced at him, let him out. That was the big criminal mastermind's plan. Now, 2 years before this, they had made a little documentary and they had titled it Devil in the Ozarks. So that was the perfect headline. The Devil of the Ozarks is free again. Everybody's scared. And that's all you heard for 12 days was how this criminal mastermind was out and he was dangerous and everyone was panicking. Okay. The Devil of the Ozarks criminal mastermind, I will tell you. Now, we do not know how he got the shirt. We do not know who created this. We do not know any of the details as of yet. But we do know that he walked out those doors and headed towards Moccasin Creek. His idea was they are going to send out scent dogs after him. And the creek was just less than a mile away. He could literally cross the creek. The dogs wouldn't be able to follow him. And he would be ready to go. Unfortunately, this criminal mastermind didn't pay attention to the weather, and we have had nothing but torrential rain off and on for months. Now, he gets to Moccasin Creek, and it has flooded its banks, and it traps him there to where he cannot cross Moccasin Creek. So he is actually found, but it takes 12 days. Because of these torrential rains and because of all the flooding, it made it even harder to find. Now, the president deployed a special ops unit of the U.S. Border Patrol to hunt down this devil of the Ozarks. So they come in with their drones and their equipment. They make an easy job of it because he was literally only a mile and a half away from the prison. Now, I was asked so many times in that 12 days, where do you think he is? Do you think they'll find him? He's such a criminal mastermind. He's so big, he's so dangerous, and blah 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 blah. And I'm sitting here going, if he is as smart as they say he is, then he won't be in the Ozarks anymore. He will be in Vegas. He'll be across the border. He'll be in New York. He will not be in the Ozarks because that's where everyone is looking, is in the Ozarks. Well, unfortunately, sometimes this is what you find out. They're not a criminal mastermind. They're an egomaniac. They do not have the IQ of some sort of criminal mastermind. He literally was trying to get to the water so the dogs couldn't track him. The water overtook him. He could not get past the water, and he could not go back. So he was trapped by torrential rains and floodwaters, and they trapped him like a drowned rat, and they found him, and they brought him back to the Arkansas State Police, and the headlines say they brought him back unharmed. And I'm like, whoop-de-doo, there is your criminal mastermind. Now they got smart and they put him in a supermax prison about an hour and a half away. So this is where I want to go on with this. There is a very, very big problem that we have in the U.S. I actually wrote about it in my my newest book, Madison County, Madhouse, Madison County. There's a whole chapter on it. I'm going to give you this man's job history, and I'm going to tell you that no one knew this job history until after this all happened. He was, in 1990 to 1991, he was a Fayetteville Police Department police officer. He was fired. Later in 1991, he joined for a short time at the Huntsville Police Department. 1993 to 1996, he was a police officer in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, but he was fired due to excessive force. He did manage to hang on to the Benton County Constable job for 4 years, but by 1997, he was appointed the police chief in Gateway, Arkansas. That fed into his egomania. He became a bully with a badge. He became causing all these problems. He was asked to leave and only was held that job for 4 months. Okay, now he blamed James Appleton for losing his job, and that was his instigation, supposedly, to kill James Appleton. Unfortunately, when you're talking about sociopaths and egomaniacs, and narcissists, they don't take the blame onto themselves for their own actions. They always project the blame onto somebody else, and unfortunately, he projected it on his victim, James Appleton, and James Appleton ended up dying because of this. Now, in the state of Missouri and Arkansas, and I actually found there's only 13 states that even have anything different whatsoever in the U.S., there is a phenomenon, some people call it gypsy cops. There's a phenomenon where police just migrate from scene to scene to scene, from place to place to place. Now, we all know what happened in Ferguson, that someone died in Ferguson, and it was a horrible, horrendous thing that happened in Ferguson, Missouri. Well, here's the problem. What they don't tell you about Ferguson was those police officers had just been dismissed from a nearby county for excess violence and excess force. Okay? But this is what happens. These officers, they get their credentials to be, their license to be an officer in the state. Okay? When they are fired or leave someplace under a cloud of suspicion, there is nothing recorded against their license. There is nothing recorded to where they lose their license unless they get a felony, unless they kill somebody, unless they do some serious jail time. No one's going to know why that officer left county so-and-so. Then that officer shows up at a rural county that is desperate for somebody that is trained and has a license to carry a badge and a gun in this state, and they take them on. There is a masking of police officers' job history. Now, if you and I went to McDonald's and asked for a job, that manager is going to ask you for your job history and you are required to tell them. Then they can make a choice whether they want you as an employee or not. Unfortunately, in the state of Missouri and Arkansas, and like I said, a lot of states across the U.S., they are not allowed to ask the officer in question for their job history. So an officer could go brutally beat someone almost to death. Don't kill him, because if you kill him, that's a record. Okay? So an officer can literally brutally almost beat someone to death, be dismissed at that office, and then go 2 counties away and get a job, and that person that's going to hire them cannot ask them about their job history. Why? Why in heaven's name shouldn't somebody who has a gun and a badge, someone who has that much access to firearms and training, we should be vetting them even more than the manager at McDonald's, don't you say? I mean, we should at least vet them as much, but they're not allowed to. And by hiding law officers' criminal record, basically, by hiding their job history, they can get by with everything short of murder. Then if they murder somebody, it makes headlines, then they're going to get their punishment. But I contend, all the way back in 1990, 91 I guess it was, when Grant Hardin was fired from the Fayetteville Police Department, if somebody took his gun and badge and he wasn't allowed to be a cop anymore, he would not have been able to get away with all of this for 20 years. He would have not killed James Appleton. So literally, the way our laws are structured, the way our things are structured, needs to be changed drastically. We could literally prevent so much crime if we held our officers accountable. Now, I'm going to tell you, I bleed blue. I am for law enforcement. And what's bad about this is you get cops like Grant Hardin, and all it does is cause good police officers trouble. Because if Grant Hardin hadn't been able to have a badge in the first place, he wouldn't have been able to have access to James Appleton. He most likely wouldn't have even been able to have access to Amy Harrison. So this is where I think I decided I would go ahead and do the Devil in the Ozarks case. Even though I don't think he's a criminal mastermind, I don't think that he deserves the moniker Devil in the Ozarks. There's been a whole lot more devils in this county, in this area, than Grant Hardin. I think he's a bad guy. I think he's a sociopath. I think he's a murderer. I think, he has an egomaniac. I think he may be narcissist. I think he's not a good person. I think he's right exactly where he needs to be in that Supermax prison. But I want people to understand that when you give someone a moniker like this, it just feeds into their egomania. This man wanted the titles to make him more big and more bad and more powerful. He ate up the power like it was candy. And you just gave him a moniker that makes him sound bigger and badder than he is. Okay? So to me, I don't like the use of monikers like that. I think it feeds into the psychosis of the criminal. I realize in media people do that to make a headline, to get more views, to sell the paper, to get the story out farther. I understand the need to make headlines. But on the other hand, we've got to be real careful about the headlines that we make and the monikers that we give these sick people. Because this guy was sick in the head, and he had no compunction, nothing to hold him back when he decided to hurt a woman. He had nothing holding him back when he decided to kill an innocent man on the side of the road in front of people. So we don't need to feed into that anymore. with these ridiculous monikers of Devil in the Ozarks. Now, we've had serial killers, brutal, hideous serial killers in the Ozarks. To me, that's more devil. Here's the thing, though. Whatever you want to call this guy, we have a serious problem. And that problem is that officers can bounce between departments all over the place. They can bounce around and around, and nobody holds them accountable for their sins, when in reality, all that would take is to change the phrasing, the legal verbiage, to where the person can ask about their job history. If you ask about their job history and you find out that this cop that you really need has actually been a bully and nearly killed a guy 2 states over and was forced to leave, then you have the ability to make a wise decision. Now you think, oh, well, Sonova, you don't know what you're talking about. You just studied. You don't have boots on the ground knowledge. I have a lot of boots on the ground knowledge, whatever that means. I have that when it comes to this. I was raised in a small town in the Ozarks. Okay, I'm from Texas. I was raised in a small town in the Ozarks. I turned 16. Now, I was raised by an ex-street thug turned Pentecostal preacher. So that's another story for another day. But my dad still had quite a bit of fire about him. I was 16 years old, and I was raised in this little country town with 5 churches, only 500 people, but we got 5 churches. Everything was nice. Crime was nowhere. Nobody had even heard of crime. It was a peaceful place. Kids wandered the streets, no problems. It was a nice place. But the local cop, he had a thing for teenage girls. And if there was any teenage girl, any beautiful girl, any pretty girl, any girl whatsoever, he would find a reason to stop them and pull them over and harass them. And one of the guys I went to school with, his mom, she was beautiful, just looked like a supermodel. And he stopped her every couple weeks for something. And the guy would come to school talking about it, griping about it. She got in trouble for improper backing out of a public place. She backed out of the grocery store, But I got pulled over. I had just got my car, just got my driver's license. He didn't recognize me or my car because I was new. And I literally pulled out a 1 stop sign. There was 2 buildings in between this, and I turned into the next stop sign. So our city block was very small. And he said I got up to 45 miles an hour to that point. So that's why he pulled me over. I'm like, I'm driving a crappy little 4-cylinder that couldn't get to 45 miles an hour with a mile, So, but anyways, he pulls me over for nothing and grabs my driver's license. He sees my last name, doesn't even go back to his car, and he's like, what's your daddy's name? And I told him. And he swallowed hard, handed me back my driver's license, and says, have a good day, sis, and walks off. Here's the problem. That was bad enough. He was finally fired, and a judge dismissed 2/3 of his tickets as frivolous against women. So that was the first cop we had. The next cop we had, everybody loved. He was beefy. He was a bodybuilder. He was built he was built wider than he was tall. Everybody loved him. All the girls in school thought he was gorgeous. Okay? So everybody loved this cop. He was the police chief. Everyone was proud of him. He was involved in all the community stuff. Everyone thought he was the greatest. Come to find out, he was fired several years later. He was fired because he was stealing guns out of the evidence lockers and selling them on the black market. So when it comes to corrupt police officers, I understand. I've had experience with a few of them. Now, it's not been violent experience, and I'm very thankful for that. But I'm telling you, these small areas are targeted by second-rate cops. And it's because there's no one there to find out their past. And what's bad is you've got all these officers who are working themselves to death trying to make their community safe, and then they get a police chief like that, and nobody knows what he's done or her. Nobody knows because they're not allowed to ask the job history. So we need to do what we can, contact our governors, contact our officials, and ask them to change the law. Police officers should be held accountable. And if this man, Grant Hardin, had been held accountable at the beginning, there's 2 people that probably wouldn't have been victimized by this man. So that's what I have for you today. Do I think that he's the devil of the Ozarks? I don't. I don't think he's the devil of the Ozarks. I think you beat the bushes around here, you're going to find someone a lot worse. But I'll see you next week. You guys have a good day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you.